You see it on the news, stories of injuries or even deaths involving confined spaces, from manhole deaths,
falls into a manhole and dies today,
to tanker trucks, to water tanks.
2 men are rescued in Saratoga County after being trapped high up inside a water tank for 4 hours.
Out of 276 confined space incidents in a 3-year span, 234 of them were deadly, and 50% of those deaths were rescuers. Confined spaces can be deadly spaces if precautions are not taken. It's hard to ignore the human emotions that surface during circumstances like these. Judgment can be clouded by witnesses and even rescuers compelled to jump into a situation and help. The purpose of this video is to make sure you know what a confined space is, how to protect yourself, what are the hazards, and what's required to enter one safely. First, what is a confined space and how do you identify it? By definition, a confined space has limited access for both entering and exiting. It's large enough for someone to get inside and work on, but not for an extended period of time. However, a permit-required confined space is even more hazardous. It has one or more of the following characteristics: a hazardous atmosphere, an engulfment hazard, for example, being buried by dirt, grain, or submerged in water or sewage flow, an entrapment hazard, and other serious safety and health hazards such as electrical, mechanical, and falls. Just a few examples of confined spaces are manholes, sewers, silos, vaults, tanks, and tunnels. So what do you need to know before you set foot in one of these spaces? In some cases, you just don't go in. Avoid entry unless you know that all safety procedures have been addressed. If in doubt, stay out. An employer has certain responsibilities before anyone enters one of these spaces. Evaluate the workplace to see if any permit spaces exist. Inform employees of permit space locations and hazards. Either prohibit entry or develop effective entry programs, including a rescue plan. This program sets procedures, equipment, and training required for safe entry. Different spaces require different entry methods. The more an employer plans and carries out proper entries, the less chance a rescue will be needed. That's why the first step is prevention. Along with the training and equipment, there are requirements before you can enter. Ideally, you need 3 people to enter a confined space: the entrant, attendant, and supervisor. Bill Bradley, superintendent of the Department of Public Utilities in Troy, New York, shows his crew the right way of doing a permit-required confined space entry.
Today, guys, we're going to take and make a confined space entry into that manhole over there to replace a line that's coming into the side there.
Bill goes over the equipment with his crew. He also parks his truck with flashing lights, creating a barrier to the potential hazard.
First thing we're going to do is start with the harness.
The harness should be checked for frays, rips, tears, or any damage, and the tag should show that it's been inspected.
This is our blower. We're going to ventilate this hole. We're going to test the atmosphere and ventilate. This blower will be hooked up and put in there to add fresh air into the hole.
Then there is the gas meter or monitor. It will check the air quality at different levels prior to and during entry. In fact, 90% of the deaths happen because air monitors or ventilators were not used.
Air monitor. It was calibrated within the last year. You want to check your calibrations.
It must be maintained, calibrated, and used per the manufacturer's instructions. Remember, you can't smell atmospheric hazards, which kill most confined space victims. The gas meter is your modern-day canary in the coal mine. Also, employees or representatives have the right to observe any testing done on equipment.
What we're going to do is take our tripod arrangement. We're going to take it over there. We're going to pull the manhole cover. We're going to set this up over and put the retractor on it. When you hook up this blower, you don't want it next to any gas engines, any truck exhausts, or any place else where it could actually pull in a hazardous atmosphere.
Before they enter the space, they must make sure the communication is working so that those in the space can talk to those outside. Also, a confined space entry form must be filled out listing the date, description of the work being done, the start and completion time, as well as the hazards. This must be signed off by a supervisor. It is an employer's responsibility to have a rescue provider in place. Oftentimes, the local fire department agrees to do it if they are properly equipped and trained.
Your average fire department is not necessarily a confined space team.
But what can happen if things go wrong? When someone goes into a situation without the proper precautions, the consequences are often fatal. A fire department in Troy, New York has extensive training and experiences in confined space rescues. Assistant Chief Jim Hughes describes a call they had involving an abandoned building and 3 children. Firefighters had to rescue 2 children who fell into an old convergence container.
They had to go into the building, which was in a state of collapse and falling apart, get into the area, rig a rope system up, drop men down into the container, the vessel, and They pulled one boy out and got him out of there. It was quite an involved operation. It involved rescuing 2 children in a confined space. It was successful. It probably took in the area of approximately 3 to 4 hours for this whole operation to transpire because, again, the safety and the conditions we were working underneath.
In this scenario, Bill has gone down into a confined space without any safety measures or provisions for rescue. The fire department has agreed to demonstrate what goes into a rescue or, oftentimes, a recovery operation. When minutes or even seconds count, one should not rely on a fire department or another rescue service to get to you, and rescuers shall not go in without coordinating and planning their entry.